larger question is, at what point does a designer become a manager? At what point does it mean that once you actually increase in your seniority, do you stop doing X or do you start doing more of Y? Right. So I would like to address that by saying that at any level of seniority, there is no such thing that is something that you will not do or should do. Like there are days that this week itself where I was working on UI and building components and so on and so forth. And at the same time, I was also working on a roadmap planning for Gratitude for 2024 as well. So there are multiple levels that I actually work on. So there is no. So in those broad hats, right? So the larger question is, at what point does a designer become a manager? At what point does it mean that once you actually increase in your seniority, do you stop doing X or do you start doing more of Y? Right. So I would like to address that by saying that at any level of seniority, there is no such thing that is something that you will not do or should do. Like there are days that this week itself where I was working on UI and building components and so on and so forth. And at the same time, I was also working on a roadmap planning for Gratitude for 2024 as well. So there are multiple levels that I actually work on. So there is no such thing that this is something that you do and this is something that you don't do. But there are a few recurring themes that follow as you grow in your seniority, as you work up your seniority ladder. And regardless of whether you're at a junior level as a designer or whether you are like 10 years experience, 15 years experience, or even more than that, these are the few broad themes that will actually, I'm assuming, help you going forward. I will be explaining each one of them as we go on. The first is design POV, with a design point of view. This is something that is almost always lacking in many products when you take a look at them. For example, it's possible to take a look at any product that is like an old school ERP product. You can put a name on it, but I'm pretty sure all of us know at least a couple of those products that look like that. Gratitude itself was one such product where you had features and modules piled on one on top of the other, and eventually it became a super complex module before design integration and actually come in. So design POV is where you impact a business through the lens of a designer. Why is this important? Obviously, it's important for a designer, but why is it important for business? Because designers are by nature problem solvers. The basic proficiency that a designer brings to the table is how creatively can a designer actually solve a problem. That is the specialty of a design. And when you bring this to the decision-making table, you eventually get creative, original solutions to problems that have not been thought of, which are different from, let's say, let's build XYZ feature or let's build ABC enhancement. And that is design POV. This is something that I have been working with my teams the last few years as well, and it is also a direction that the industry is going towards, where design sits on the same table as the decision-making business and product and helps define the direction of the business that it goes in. That is the first theme that I would like to cover. Before I proceed further, does anyone know what this is? I know this looks like a shelf, but has anyone seen this? Does anyone have any idea what this is?
This looks like a visual merchandising retail store panel. Is that
Close enough.
Close enough.
It is. Okay, I think my voice is right. I'm sure most of you at least would have heard of Dieter Rams, design head of Brown. And have you guys heard of Dieter Rams? Is there anyone who has heard this name?
No, I haven't heard.
Oh, okay. Okay, no problem. So Dieter Rams is like considered the godfather of modern design, and eventually the Apple computer, the Apple iPhone, calculator, and a few other apps. They have taken their inspiration from the products that Dieter has designed. So he's considered like one of the landmark designers. He designed the original calculator, the way it looks, the transistor, the one with the tuning knob, things that we take for granted. That is something that originally came out of the mind of Dieter Rams. So this is a shelving system made by Dieter Rams. This came at a time where if a store had to stock, like some of you, like one of you has correctly pointed out, like if the merchandising shelf, like if you have to stock some items on a shelf or an inventory, the natural solution that would come at that point is let's make more racks, or let's make a tall rack, let's make a vertical rack, or let's just cover a wall with wooden beams and then let's just make racks where you can actually, cabins where you can actually store stuff, right? So the natural solution which Dieter Rams brought at that point of time, which today seems quite instinctive and conventional, but at that point he said, let's get rid of the racks, let's provide these aluminum frames that are running through, and we let the user decide whether or not that person wants a rack or a cabinet, or how many of those racks or how many of those cabinets need to be. So the lowest amount of modularity was something that the company provided. The company's name is Bitsu. They still sell this even after I think 20-30 years after Dieter Rams has made it, with almost a little modification. You guys can look it up if you're interested later. So this shelving system is called the 606 shelving system, or the universal shelving system, and every customer uses this differently. Like for some people, like as you see, you have these cabinets in the bottom, some you have racks in the top, some people put cabinets and racks which are mix and match. So every user uses it differently, and all this is because a designer, which is Dieter Rams, actually dictated the direction that you would take to solve a problem. Now imagine it could have happened the other way around. In many cases, like how it happens in our life. A product manager comes with a problem statement that has been stated. Dude, I want this. This is my client. They need these racks. This is the amount of inventory that needs to be done. Tell me what is the best way to actually solve this problem. Chances are the solution would have involved probably the most intuitive way to shelf, or most intuitive way to show racks or to add cabinets, but it would have never resulted in the modularity that it has resulted in today. And that is what I wanted to talk about. This is the impact area of design POV. The first impact area is on the business, which is how can design help you decide why do we actually need to solve the problem? Is there something that is actually going wrong in the first place? Or is it that you have a very subjective reason as to why a problem needs to be solved? Why are we not meeting expectations? And what are the metrics that we are trying to improve? Then there is a conversation component with the product where you work on risk, feasibility, etc., where you work with product engineering and multiple other teams. And finally, BML, which is build, measure, learn. This is essentially your product lifestyle, where you build something, then you measure whether it's working or not, and then you learn from it, and then you keep repeating the cycle. I have used quite a few jargon here. I would not go into the detail of it. I would not go into explaining what JDBD and all that stuff is. I'm hoping that like some of you would have probably encountered or would have at least been familiar with the jobs to be done framework, but I'm not going into that. It's not the purpose of this presentation. I'm just giving you a heads up as to what this is. So when all these factors come into the picture, then there is one framework that fits in, that helps in building design POV, which is called the Lean UX framework. And it is one of the main purposes of a design manager to ensure that there is a smooth and streamlined Lean UX process in place, so that designer, whoever is working on it, can help make those decisions while building the product and why the product needs to be built. It empowers the designers across all levels of seniority when lean UX is in place, and making sure that the process is in place is one of the things that you play when you become the strategic role of a design team. Towards that, I just wanted to highlight the core aspect of design POV, which is that there is no such thing called a requirement. Right? Whenever somebody comes and tells you, build an X module, I would like to build this inventory system which has, 10 data fields or 20 attributes that needs to be done. Right? That is also an assumption. We expect that because that assumption is coming based on certain data that has been inputted, that is still an interpretation based on the data by a team which has extrapolated the data and formed an assumption. So everything is an assumption when you go to that fact that as to whatever it is that the designer works on. So when you come up with something which is a very detailed requirement document, which has listed down all the list of things that you need to do, by the end of the day, there are a series of assumptions that have been made based on which the requirement document has been built. So one thing that has really helped me in the past is that we chuck that out. We decide, hey, you know what? Let's get rid of the requirement document. We have a few assumptions that are made, and those are the assumptions that need to be validated, and those are the ones that we need to learn from. So how about we take those assumptions and try to validate them as quickly as possible to see if we are going in the right direction. That means no lengthy PRDs, no detailed stakeholder approval process for PRDs and BRDs, just the basic user story, just the basic jobs, and then the designs are out. So these are the two main components that actually have helped in building the whole design POV process, and that is one of the primary points that I.
Hi, I'm Anthony here. I have a question. So you spoke about moments when people have like creative blocks, but I want to know in terms of general training, like you would at some point want that your team can function without you. So in terms of general training for your team, is there anything specific that you do?
So in terms of general training, every designer has a certain cycle time or lead time, which is an output based on where they are stuck on, where they are working on, right? So this gives me a general marker on what a designer needs to work on improving, and what a designer is actually very good at, and where they can continue growing at that. So let's say a designer has communication skill as a concern. Like the designer is shy or not very effective in talking, and they're not able to present something that well. So what I do is I map it to the goal of a designer that I set on a quarterly basis, and every month there is a one-on-one where we see the alignment to see where the progress is, and towards the end of the quarter we check if that growth has actually there's a quantifiable improvement in the respective goal that is happening. It could be anything. It could be skill with respect to communication. It could be UI skill. It could be anything else. So it's usually goals and one-on-ones that I use.